Ladies and gentlemen, this is the ninth episode of Concerned Dabs podcast. I am your host, KDM Kane. With me is my co host, Will Terps.
How's it going, everyone?
All right, tonight's guest is One Eye, the creator of the Dogwalker OG, which I am a super big fan of. I think Will is
Yep.
also a super huge fan.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely one of my top five strains, I'd say.
Yeah, dude, that and the Scooby snacks too. It looks like he's just
Oh
joining the
yeah.
video chat now. Um, he's also I he works at a garden supply store too. I don't know how much he wants to talk about that. Um, we're also gonna ask him about Phylos because
Boy, oh boy, oh
there he
boy.
is right there.
Hello, hello.
All right.
Hold on, let me get myself kind of situated.
Oh yeah, it's all good, man. So what did you do last week on your weekend off, Will?
Um, God, what did I do? Tried to get my internet at home to work, for a bit, but that after that didn't go through. Just hung out, played some golf.
That's tight. And it's nice and not rainy. Just hot.
Yeah, it's been pretty nice here. It's been rainy at times, but a little bit more sunshine in the last few weeks.
That's tight, dude. That's tight.
Yeah, what about you, man? Did you do anything fun?
Nah, trying to think of I did my video like that was like May 26th, so that was a couple weeks ago. I
Nice,
shot it with a model. My homie Willie Animal helped me shoot the scenes that I was in. Um,
nice.
I'm trying to find a guy with an indoor room down here that's in bloom. Like one of my Mexican homies is supposed to holler back tomorrow. Like hopefully I can shoot in there and just pull some
Nice.
leaves because I need that scene still. Cedar was actually I shot the first time in his garden up there in Portland, and it didn't. I lost the footage, so it's like fuck,
Yeah,
gotta
that's fine.
reshoot everything. All
Yeah.
right, so how you feeling right now, Rich? Are you
Yeah,
comfortable
I'm
now?
good. I think I'm all right. This will work.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our guest this evening, One Eye. How's it going, sir?
Good, fantastic. How's everybody out there?
We're
Who am I?
doing
Who
all
I got
right.
here? I see one, two, three.
Yeah, so I'm Ketty Kane. I'm the guy that hit you up on IG. Petrelli82 is my other handle. This is my co-host Will Terps right here.
How's
And
it
then
going?
the two
Hi, buddy.
guys on the left, those are my IT guys, Mitchell and Jesse. They're out there in Idaho.
Oh, right on.
So
Okay, making it
yeah,
all happen. Thank you,
yeah,
guys.
man, it's a team
Yeah.
team effort. And so yeah, Will's on the East Coast. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and those guys
Oh,
are
wow.
on in Lapway, Idaho, on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation. So
Oh, wow. Okay,
we're
so we're
here.
all over the place here. I love it.
Yeah, man. It's
Fantastic.
sometimes we have server issues with so much distance, but it sounds like we're doing pretty good tonight so far. So
Okay, cool.
yeah, dude. Man, dude, like I'm really excited to have you on the show, man. Like
Well,
it's
thank you. I'm
yeah,
excited to be a part of this, actually.
yeah.
I
We
appreciate the invite. I really do.
thanks, dude. Thanks. I'm gonna get right into my cookie cutter questions that I have.
Okay.
Can you please state your name, company, city, state, etc.? Are you a medical grower still? Or?
Sure, 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 sure. So, I go by One Eye out there in the world. My name is Rich.
Yep.
I work for a company called Roots Garden Supply, where I'm the director of sales. I'll
Yeah.
be going on about 8 years there. I've been cultivating for a long time 25, 26, 7, 8 plus years. Started on the East Coast there in Virginia and finally
Dude,
made my way out
tight.
west. Yeah, so
Nice. We're in
original Virginia Beach originally. So that's where
Oh,
I'm
nice.
from.
I'm from Northern Virginia, so
Oh, well, I went to school at George Mason, GMU.
nice.
So, yes,
Nice. Yeah, I'm
back
from
to
Arlington, so
Arlington. Okay, well, my very best friend in the world still lives there. So,
nice. That's
good
awesome.
place. Right on,
Yeah.
right on. So yeah, that's a quick introduction of who I am, and fire away, man. I'm here to answer the questions and fill in the gaps.
Okay, dude. So I'm gonna skip the Roots Garden Supply since you already answered that question.
Hmm.
I shopped in there a few times with you guys. I got some veg lights, and I think
Oh,
the
right on.
100 times loot I got to
Yeah,
check out
for sure.
that graph from
Okay.
you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I grew 4 rec plants, and I got all my material and starting there from Roots Garden Supply. So,
Oh,
Yeah,
get out of
man.
town. Oh, right on.
yeah,
Very cool.
Yeah. When I
I
was
actually live in Oregon. I just been back. I've been back east for a bit now. So yeah,
Okay. I was gonna say, wow,
yeah.
we're far away from the East Coast to be buying gear, but
yeah,
appreciate the
exactly, right.
support. Yeah, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Totally.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Of course.
I moved to Phoenix in 2018, so
Okay.
I've been down here a little bit. I still go
Okay.
back and visit 4 or 5 times a year. I got 2 boys up there in Oregon still, so
Oh, right on. Okay, so
yeah.
it'll always be a little bit of home for you then, huh?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Nice.
gotta make it back always.
Right on.
So my next cookie cutter question
Hmm.
is: so you are the guy who bred
Hmm.
the Dogwalker OG?
Correct. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You can
Um,
that a little bit.
yeah, sure. So it really the origins of that start back in the, I don't know, 05-ish era, when we first saw or at least in the circle that I was with, we first got access to the OG Kush cut from LA. And people always ask, which cut was it? I don't know. It was the cut that was out in '05. It
Yeah.
came to us as OG Kush, nothing else attached to it. To my recollection, there weren't as many of the iterations of it, of course, that we have now. But this is, pretty much Josh D's OG as far as I'm concerned. Um, and around the same time, I also received a cut of Albert Walker. And the
And
OG was
is that from California too, Roman?
the not the Albert Walker that we got. No.
Okay.
It's one of those strains that's steeped deep in legend and lore, and it
Yeah.
really believes. It really depends on whose story you believe. There's a lot of claim though to the Northwest, or from the Northwest as its origin.
That's awesome.
Um, so we had seen it on the East Coast in the '90s. To see it back out here was really kind of remarkable at the time.
Yeah.
But I will say for both of those two varietals, each one in their own right were kind of a pain in the butt to grow.
Yeah.
At the time, the OG was very small, support network for the flowers, lots of brittleness in the stems. And I'm sure if we knew a little bit more back then as what we know now, we could have made corrections around this. But it was the kind of thing where, I could come into the room week 7.5 and there'd be 3 tops on the floor, not
Damn.
bent over, but snapped and broken. So,
Damn.
it was a tough little plant. It was a tough plant to grow at the time for me. And Albert Walker was, in its own right, very finicky, very nutrient sensitive. Um, but my last round of OG Kush that I didn't do a whole bunch of them because due to the nature of the difficulty of growing it at the time. But the plant stressed and popped a couple of pollen spikes.
Ah.
And at that point of my growing experience, I knew that I could use these spikes to pollinate. I hadn't quite put together the whole, like, most of the progeny would be feminized, or in feminine nature. Certainly we're getting males out of it, but you get stable and unstable results.
Yeah.
So I saved it, and on one of the last rounds of Albert Walker I ever did, applied just a little tin with the pollen spikes in it, and just paintbrush and tap 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 tap, and created just a few viable seeds. That became the AWOG, or the Albert Walker OG. And I didn't do much with that until later in the 2000s. Uh, and really, Dogwalker, the whole concept started after I first heard about the cookies phenomenon.
Yeah.
So, like in 2010.
Yeah.
And I'd just been down in Cali, and I'd been at a friend's place in NorCal, and he was explaining, there's this new train, people pay, you know, above the going rate for,
Yeah.
pounds at the dispensaries. Cuts are selling for $1,000, but nobody can really get it. And da 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 da. And when I
Yeah.
finally tried it for the first time, I was like, it's a good strain. I just didn't understand
The
the
hype.
the movement and hype behind it. So
Yeah.
at the time here in Oregon, prices were cascading in a downward trend. And, a lot of my friends are growers, and a lot of folks who had been, who are putting the same amount of work that they always have, if not more, getting less and less for, their hard work.
Yeah.
And so I thought, if there's something I could do or something I could contribute and create and release it to a very small group of folks, we can kind of control the price
Yeah.
and give a little bit back to the growing community, right? To the
Yeah,
growers,
man.
put a little bit of the power in their hands. And almost serendipitously, right as I was, having this whole idea in my head, I got that first cut of Chem, which was originally handed to me as Chem 98. I knew that wasn't really a thing. So
Is
I
is
went,
that is that referencing the year, or is that just the
well,
pheno they
the,
pulled?
well,
Because
no,
there's
see,
like
and
a
that's the thing. I
98
mean,
Bubba, you know what I mean?
right.
But
And,
there's
and I,
also so Cinderella 99. I'm like, is that referencing the year when they bred the Bubba into something
I,
else, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't
well,
understand.
so for me, I mean, I was very familiar with the Chem story. I mean, I saw that when I was back east for sure. I did a lot of fish tour. I've known G for years as a glass blower. But when it was handed to me with this label of Chem 98, I knew right away. I was like, well, this isn't right. So I kind of went back to the because it came to me kind of almost secondhand. I went back to the original person who passed it to me and said, hey, this doesn't make sense. Goes back to the group. They're like, oh yeah, it's Chem 91. So we go with Chem 91, right? Nobody ever
Yeah,
challenges that for the first like 5-6 years.
yeah,
Um, so
funky, funky.
AWOG seeds get cracked. One of them's stable, one of them's not. The one that's not, the pollen is taken and applied to the Chem, what we thought was Chem 91, but now we know is Chem 4. Applied to the plant, seeds were created, and then I actually had a coworker at Roots that I handed 5 of the seeds to. I said, "Hey, pop these. Let's get through them." I didn't have room at my space to make this happen. I said, I'll help with selection. We'll figure it out." And throughout the course of that first grow of those first 5 seeds, he kept saying, "There's this one that's super musky. There's this one." He just kept using the word musky. And I thought, what a
Yeah,
strange word to use, but interesting. And then when I
yeah.
finally got to see the first plant, I said, "Okay, this is
That's a
something
winner.
different. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
all gas, no brakes. It's reeks. It's not necessarily the prettiest plant in the world, but for the most part, I thought, this is something that will stand out."
yeah,
So
man.
that cut goes to the original 8, and for about 18 months, we kept it pretty tight.
Yeah.
Um, it became kind of unfortunately, a fracture of friendships.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
necessarily
yeah,
between me and the original 8, but between some of the original 8 and some of their folks.
yeah,
And we all learned a lot of lessons about hoarding and things like that. But we were able to maintain this, you know, uh, surge in price, where
yeah,
and so the market manipulation kind of worked. Well, while all this is going on, I'm now starting to work with a couple of dispensaries. This is right when dispensaries kick in,
yeah,
start to take shape here in Oregon.
yeah.
I first had a booth at Cannabis, which was kind of like a farmer's market style
Dude,
place,
when I
and
first got my card, that's the only place I would go. There was like 4 tables, bro. Like,
right, yep, yeah.
come on, man.
I was one of the first 4 other people, to sit at one of those 4 tables. And what I realized right away with Dogwalker is I was getting kind of feedback from people, the next day time I saw them, about how helpful it was, stimulating appetite or their migraines. So I'm thinking, okay, well, here is something that, you know, we're going beyond the market manipulation of it, and we're actually finding that it's great medicine for people.
Yeah,
I started doing some analytics with Sunrise Analytical,
yep.
which was one of the first.
R.I.P.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I was so sad to lose Pat Marshall's
Man,
place.
man, I
That
really
was
love
tough.
them. Back when
Yeah,
I was first a patient, I used to get the RSO caps they made, and they sold fucking 200 milligram RSO caps for $5, and it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah, it
I
was
tell
sad
you.
to see him go for sure.
So, for me, it was, looking at all this data. And one of the things that Pat Marshall was doing with his analytics back then is he was doing these giant terpene analysis before anybody else was, and full
Yeah,
cannabinoid profiles. Um, so we were using, kind of collecting the data, because in the beginning, this was my idea, is like, if we can find enough commonalities in secondary metabolite production, maybe we can kind of create these thumbprints for, my genetics so that I can say, yes, it is this, or no, it's not. Because within the first year of Dogwalker being released, there were already imposters, and some folks got some
Yeah.
S1 seed, and cracked that. So, validating the strain and keeping that consistent was at the time was very important. And I'll say probably the most, when I started working originally with pharma and providing
Fantastic, man.
medicine for them when they were just a medical dispensary, that's when I started to get these amazing stories of, the one that resonates, probably one of the best with me, was this gentleman whose wife had these debilitating migraines, and their marriage was on the rocks, and their kids had pretty much lost their mom. And she comes in, and she first, he gets her this dog walker, he takes it back, she uses it reactively at first, it helps, then she starts using it proactively, and
Yeah,
4, 6, 8, 10 months later, the migraines are gone.
that's dope,
He has
dude.
his wife back, his kids have their mom back. And when you hear these kinds of stories, it makes it so much more worth it all.
Yeah, dude.
All the
It's a righteous cause, bro.
yeah,
You know what I
and
mean?
seeing it as the medicine that it really, really is. So, what started off as this kind of, non organic market manipulation thing really turned into this wonderful source of medicine, and a variety now that has, started to stand the test of time, and still is, I'm tickled to death that it's still relevant today. And
Yeah,
it's
dude.
still, still always is one of my favorites.
Yeah, Pig Farm, OMMP Pig Farm. Whenever he'd run that dog walker,
Oh
those
yeah,
Scooby snacks, bro,
pigs,
I was like,
pigs
damn,
runs
man,
it,
that shit's
runs it all
fire.
really well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's
Whatever
got
he touches
game.
turns to gold. That's for sure.
Yeah,
exactly,
man. So,
Yeah.
exactly.
did
Don't
you
even get me
ever?
started on the Scooby snacks. Good
Oh
lord.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
a whole nother.
did you do that too? Was the
Yeah,
Scooby
yeah,
snacks?
yeah.
Damn.
So the Scooby
Talk about that
is
too, please. Talk
sure,
about
sure,
that
sure.
too.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Scooby's kind of an interesting one. The forum cut that I brought up from Northern California, after I visited my buddy's farm, did this really weird thing, and to me, it's a phenomenon. If I ever had one plant in the room, and I don't run big rooms here, so full disclosure. So if I had one plant running in the room, it would always create a couple of lower hangers down on the very bottom branches, one or two, not many. The first time it kind of, I saw it, I was like, holy shit, kind of caught me off guard, plucked them, got rid of them. The second time it happened was when I did it, and I said, hey, one is in the room, let's keep an eye on this. And then it hit the dog walker, right? And that's where we
Ah,
got the original Scooby seeds. And then the
word.
third time, I actually put it in there intentionally, and it recreated the whole thing. So I said, "This is just some, I don't know if it's a survival trait or some weird stress response. If I put multiples in the room, never happened. Put one in the room, it happens. I don't know. If I
Strange.
didn't see it and I didn't experience it, I wouldn't believe it myself. But
Maybe it is like it can tell it's by itself. You know what I mean?
a survival technique is what I chalked it up
Yeah.
to.
Damn,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So that Scooby then, as when I did the first cracks of the Scooby seeds, um, Scooby has this really like interesting story. And it's kind of a kind of a hard one to tell. So when I first cracked the seeds, I had two different selections. One was stable, one was not. The one that was stable, I called this Scooby Snacks. The one that was not, I called the Scrappy Doo.
Nice.
And the Scooby Snacks, I actually handed to one of my coworkers. And unfortunately, he passed away suddenly.
Bummer, man.
And yeah, that was pretty sad. And when a few of us went over to his house to kind of take down the garden and kind of make it disappear before his family came out, so they wouldn't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, I saw the two Scooby plants in the corner of the room, so I was like, "Wow, this is it." So I cut a few branches, wrapped them in wet paper towel, put them in a plastic bag, and then I just shredded the what was left of the two plants. I didn't want, because I knew it was good. I just didn't want it getting out.
Yeah.
And I put those in my fridge. And a couple days later, I saw Pat from Heroes. He and I have been good friends for a long time. I said, "Hey, man, here are these cuts. Run with them, take care of them." And the funny story is Pat actually had forgotten them in his fridge. And
Ah,
like 7 or 8, 9 days later, whatever, like was like, "Oh shit, I had this thing still wrapped up," and only a couple of them actually made it.
ah,
So from that point, and at the time, Pat and Pigs and Hound Dog, all those guys were all kind of running in the same circle, and those guys more or less adopted the strain and ran with it for almost 6 years uncontested, nobody else, and myself included. I actually just got it back about a year and a half ago.
tight.
But that one to me, as much as I love the Dog Walker, when it comes to just a cascade of flavor, the Scooby,
Yeah,
that's the
bro.
goat. I mean, for
Yeah,
me,
man.
it really is. I mean, there's so many different layers of flavor in that strain, especially when it's done right. And that's, and one of the things I love about it is you don't see it done by a gazillion different people, not like Dog Walker, of course.
Nah.
We've managed to hold that one in. So we make sure that when I do a release of it, it's getting into a group or a garden that I know will represent it well.
Yeah.
That's not something we want to water down.
Hell no, dude. Like that shit's
Definitely.
fire. Every time Pig Farm, like we would can that shit. Every time we get packs, it was like,
Yeah, no,
you
that
know what I'm
was
Yeah,
saying? Like,
that
damn,
was
it's
he's always one of
amazing.
my
only
favorites.
5 cans.
Absolutely.
Like this is
Yeah,
fire. This is fire. Put the logo on there. Like that shit was butter.
Right on.
definitely.
We got one question from one of our production guys, Jesse.
Yep.
He says, "How did you get the name One Eye?" It looks like he has.
I do have two eyes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shameful story. Uh, College nickname.
Okay.
When
Frank
I
the
was in,
Tank. Frank the
yeah,
Tank.
when I was in college, they would say that there was this moment where I would transition into the state of being one-eyed, where I'd have one eye open and one eye closed. Generally, that
Word.
was late in the night.
What?
So you see on my Instagram, my college graduation cap with one eye. If you go look the very first picture, that's what it is, right? And so I have that hat on at graduation, and of course, after you do the walk or whatever, your parents come, and you're there with all your friends, and everybody's kind of blazed and happy. And first thing my mom says, "What is this one eye thing on your hat?" And of course, all my friends were like, "You gotta tell her now." I'm like, "No, don't want to let you know, mom, is how wasted I would get." But yeah, so
That's
there
awesome.
it is. It's not it's not the most exciting story. I'm not the one I'm most proud of, but
All
nicknames are
good.
given. Damn it,
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
you
Same
earn
thing
them.
where I'm from,
that's
bro.
it's
Once they
also what
call
you
you
do in
that,
college. I mean,
yeah, it
Right,
sticks.
right. Well, absolutely. I was a
that's
normal
what you do.
college dude.
Exactly.
You
No
know.
doubt. Okay,
So
so I'm gonna
hmm,
move forward with
yep.
my next cookie cutter question. Did you submit the genetics that you bred to Phylos Bioscience?
Yes. So I have submitted Dogwalker, Gooby Snacks, Kim 4. Somebody else submitted the biz for me. I don't think I ever put the Wook in there.
What was the parents on the biz?
That's just Dogwalker's sister.
Oh,
So I
okay.
did a second round of seed cracks a few years after the original, and then I had a selection of one through 4, and the 4 was the one that I ran with. That is what is now called the Biz, and it's interesting. It's just like kind of flipping the script of Dogwalker as far as the flavor profile is concerned. So
Yeah.
where Dogwalker is this like inner rush of the woodiness with this giant gas exhale, the Biz is this inner rush of gas with all the cedar and sandalwood on the exhale. And
Ah.
early in its cure, it possesses this really interesting limonene note that unfortunately disappears over time. But yeah, so it yields a little more. It always tests a little higher. So it's just a sister. That's
That's
it.
tight.
and,
And
Yeah.
then
and
the Wook.
the the Wook that's Albert Walker and Foreign Cut, right?
The Albert Walker OG, yeah, and the form
Yeah,
cut.
Albert Walker
Yep,
OG.
yep.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
pretty much the Scooby without the Kim 4.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
You know, and I'll say this. So, you know, it's interesting you asked about the Phylos and what I uploaded, right? You
Yeah.
know, believe it or not, one of the most humbling experiences I've had so far in all this was to find out that, you know, I had the genetics wrong on Dogwalker,
Ah,
right? And this came to me via Phylos.
nice.
Now I'm not going to grandstand and make this an opportunity, you know, to make people think that I'm sitting here and lifting them up. I'm certainly not.
Yeah.
But
But
for
they
validation,
gave you some data, you know what I mean? That
yeah.
helped you out.
Well, what it was is they actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, you know, we've got CSI's Chem 91 here, you know, that we just uploaded in the Galaxy. It's not, you know, touching your Chem 91. We're a little concerned." They said we're going to run a couple more tests, and next day they reach out and say, "Oh well, you know, it's matching exact match to their Chem 4." So I was actually on the East Coast, driving from Virginia Beach to DC, as a matter of fact, when this call came through, and I immediately reached out to my buddy Bob Hemphill.
Oh, okay,
Bob's
there we
kind
go.
of renowned as the librarian. He's a holder of many genetics, and certainly all the chem genetics.
Nice.
Um, And so when I asked him a few questions about, you know, well, he actually asked me a few questions about, you know, the look of the plant, the amount of stretch, the nose. And then he came up with this one little detail that really resonated. He says, "Hey, you know, do you have problems with the flowers bronzing after, you know, a month or so after takedown?" I said, "Man, if I, you know, I don't care how I store it, you know, if it's sealed, if it's vac sealed, it always, you know, starts to turn." He said, "Well, that's the plight of Chem 4."
Huh.
And so he kind of helped to validate what Phylos was suspicious of. And, you know, then I had this wonderful time of reaching out to the community, and I was really nervous about it. You know, I didn't want people to kind of clown on me. Actually, everybody's really receptive, just to say, "Hey, look, guys, you know, I was wrong. We need to, you know, and for the purpose of accuracy, you know, update your files, update your lists."
Yeah,
I couldn't
change
really
the
get
name.
any website to do it, but you know, so now, you know, there's a load of sites out there that list it still as Chem 91. And I've tried, I've sent emails, but
Yeah.
pretty much all in vain. But you know, so out of that, you know, that is something in my relationship with Phylos and uploading my genetics that did prove to be a positive.
Okay, so that leads me into my next cookie cutter question, I guess.
Sure.
So your take, what was your take on doing business with them back then when you first submitted those? Was somewhat
Yeah.
positive, correct?
Um, yeah, so I mean, I actually was interacted with him extremely early on when they did like an oral history. The oral history was, you know, trying to map the movement of cannabis across the globe from its origins, and then as it moved and people moved across land masses, trying to kind of track and see where it went, and then looking at, you know, when do we start intentionally breeding, when is there just open field breeding, you know, it was a very interesting discussion. And at the time, um, you know, I was invited to sit in on this panel. We did it at Pharma, and it was a wonderful event, and I met some really nice people. And I thought, you know, here's these guys, you know, the owners, who are definitely scientists. You know, they're certainly smarter than I am. Um, but they want to bring this science to our community and do it with it, you know, for and by the community. I didn't see them as the, you know, the overlords or the overthinkers that, you know, eventually they may have evolved to become. Uh, you know, so in the beginning, it was like, here are these guys who grew up going to country fair, and immediately that gives you like, you know,
They're okay.
they're okay. Yeah, they're good
Yeah,
people, you know,
yeah,
and you know, that kind of gives you the thumbs up. Um, and you know, they were like one of us,
yeah,
and so at the time it felt very comfortable. And then, you know, Robert Connell Clark jumps in, and here's someone that, you know, I've admired at that point for, you know, decades. You know, if there's ever an ethnobotanist who knows cannabis, this is the guru. So to
yeah.
go out to dinner with him and, you know, have these little, you know, wonderful experiences was very nice and pleasant in the beginning. And then, And then the Galaxy was pitched. Okay, here's this thing we're going to create with the Open Cannabis Project, and you upload your material, and it'll protect you from those corporate pirates from laying claim to your hard work.
Yeah,
And at the time, that was a compelling argument,
it
and
was,
it
dude. I like,
made
man.
sense to me. I said, I need to get my stuff in there. Then let's
Yeah,
get it up. Um, over time, my interacting with them definitely slowed down when it came into doing, the sex test. Of course, we sold the sex test through our store for a couple of years until they went to an online model. And the relationship with the owners was a pretty, it felt like a pretty decent one. I will
yeah,
admit that there were moments along my relationship with them where I had other colleagues who were saying things like, you know, take a closer look, pay attention to
yeah,
what's going on. And I think after in the wake of all of this, one of my takeaways is that I'm kind of a little upset with myself for not thinking as critically as I could about a situation, for allowing myself to kind of be duped a little bit.
yeah.
Um,
Sometimes it just feels right, Rich.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's still wrong,
I, but I think it does well, and I think what's happened is there's been this transformation of the minds behind that company into becoming the thing that they were fighting against from the get-go, or at least pitching to us that they were going to be fighting against.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah,
It's evolved into that. And,
yeah.
where they came out saying, fuck the Monsantos and we're going to protect you from Bayer Ag.
Dude, yeah.
Now they're kind of stepping into those same shoes.
It was in, yeah, like February 2016. I heard that Mowgli guy speak at the Cannabis Collaborative conference there in
Mm-hmm,
Portland. And it
mm-hmm,
seemed like that was most of what the crowd's questions were about. Are you going to genetically modify cannabis? Are you going to do? And he was just like, no, like we have a sex test. You can get your genetics tested. So there's all
yeah,
these markers so you can see what's really. And I was like, that's cool. You know what I mean? And anybody who I knew who was breeding, I'm like, yo, you should send your shit in just to see what it looks like and see what it's
sure,
related to. You know what I mean? Like I suggested
absolutely.
it to everybody because I cracked a lot of seeds in my day, but I never had
Mm-hmm.
the balls to try and attempt it. I was afraid every single time I saw fucking pollen sacks. I was like, hand this to the homie who breeds. You know what I mean? Like I'm scared.
Sure.
You know?
Well, and I think really, you know, when you know when we were having kind of the early days of involvement with the company, like I said, everybody looked at it as a step to not necessarily securing your IP, but at least insulating yourself a little bit from what was the impending doom. When
Yeah.
Big Ag gets involved, right?
You have some sort of record that this was what you submitted from
Right.
your
It's
work.
public
So
domain now,
yeah.
right? And that at the time it was very convincing. And since we've gotten to where we are now with it, um, so much has come out that you know troubles me, in the sense that there's two separate messages from that company. There's the message to the community, which is me, right, and everyone else, and then there's the message to the investors, and those two messages couldn't be more different from the other.
Exactly.
And when you get to a point where you realize in your business that you're not generating enough income off of things like sex tests and galaxies, and you have to step into the breeding world,
Yeah.
well, the way that you announce it isn't to stand on a stage and kind of pound your chest and talk about how all other genetics are going to be obsolete when you're done with this project. Hey,
Yeah,
man, to me,
man.
that's a little offensive, but whatever.
Yeah.
The way you announce it, though, it couldn't have been done more. Uh, just I don't
Smack in
know.
the face.
I'm trying to think of the
Smack in the
word for
face.
it, but
Smack in the face.
yeah, it came out thumping on their chest, and then the the feeble attempt to clean up the PR mess. The attempts to fix that were equally, if not worse,
Yeah,
of
dude.
a slap to the face of the community. And look, I am not one of those people that thinks that they've taken everybody's tissue and they're going to be tissue culturing it and pulling genes and CRISPRing and shit like that. If they do, if I'm wrong about this, I'm wrong. But to me, what's outrageous and what's upsetting was this misleading of a community, of an entire community.
Yeah, the whole state, bro.
It's a
You know what
betrayal.
I mean?
It is.
Yeah,
Yes,
It's like a
yeah.
betrayal.
It's like you
And,
told
absolutely. It's a bait and switch.
us you
It's
weren't
bait and
gonna do
switch.
it.
You got to have some kind of heart, some kind of mind to knowingly do that to a whole community. You know, it
Absolutely.
takes. It's like
Yeah.
I can't even like speak to the type of
Right.
person that it takes to do that. You know, to like.
Well,
Yeah.
someone who's calculating and lacking of emotion, maybe.
Yep.
Sociopaths are really good at that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And really good business people are generally sociopaths. And so yeah, it was the feeling of betrayal, and then the response to it. When the community said, cried foul, and then the way they responded to that call of foul was just also deplorable. It was just a mess from the get go. Once that ball started rolling,
Yeah.
and rather than sitting around and talking about how bad they were and all the crappy things they did, what I really feel needs to happen is this needs to bring people together so that we can have more of a collective voice and a collective understanding. The divisiveness in this industry is what is probably our greatest weakness.
Yeah.
And that's why companies like this can potentially prevail.
Yeah, dude. Like I haven't talked to very many homies on because I didn't know very many guys who submitted their genetics. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And like you said, they obviously couldn't support their company on sex tests and genetic testing, so
Right.
they tried to solicit some big dollars. But it's like the thing that I hope people are not sending their stuff in anymore after seeing because I watched the videos and I'm like, man, I'm like, he said he wasn't gonna do all that. You know what I mean? And then like in the videos too, he's like name dropping Syngenta as two people at the company used to work for and like passed some stuff through for Syngenta, like as far
Right.
as most and referencing that to the investors, like, so we're trying to go as big as we can with it. And I'm just like, damn, man. Like,
Yeah,
this is
it's
bad.
like I said, they evolved into the thing which they seem to originally stand strongest against. And
Yeah.
that's a pretty wicked evolution.
Yeah, man. Like, sad story. So that I guess that's my next cookie cutter question is like, what's your take on doing business with them now? Do they still
No.
like contact you? Do you like is it
I
just
mean, I've had a conversation or two with current and ex folks that work there concerning this.
Yeah, Dick Fitz, he did the High Times interview, right?
Yeah, that was
That was pretty sad too. That was pretty damning, and I was like,
yeah, that was pretty
damn.
bad. The I can't remember Dale, the plant patent attorney. The article that I posted on my page a couple weeks ago, came from the plant patent attorney that was originally hired by Phylos and the Open Cannabis Project to do work. And his article is to me the most to me one of the most well written ones, and also most revealing. He really brings a couple of points to light that haven't been mentioned in other articles that certainly cause reason for concern. So yeah, currently, I've no interest in doing business with them right now. If anything, I hope people like Sungrown keep the conversation going, keep the topic relevant. I have a very suspicious feeling that this company just is hoping everybody will quiet down eventually and forget.
Yeah, dude, I'm not. I asked them to come on the show. They didn't
Yeah.
respond. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm gonna
A lot
ask
of
some
people
real
have asked them to come on
questions.
shows, and they're not.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't want to talk about it. They don't want to squirm on
No,
camera
because they
or on
know
the mic.
everyone's going to use it as a chance to openly debate them.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Absolutely.
like, well, you said this, and then you said this. So which
Right.
one is it? You know, like, can we ask you which one it is? You know, is it this or is it that? So is there any way for them to gain your trust back after seeing that stuff? And
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The galaxy is a novel idea.
yeah,
it's a
I
cool
thought it
little
was
trinket.
dope. Yeah,
It's dope, but but you get what I'm saying. But like in the grand scheme of things, it is, you know, it's not a deep diving tool.
no,
Without chemotype analysis and stuff like that, without a bunch of males in the galaxy, which you don't have, you only have a little bit of the picture there. And
yeah,
granted, it does help. Like I said, it helped to validate I had Chem 4, not Chem 91. That was a good thing.
yeah,
But other than that, I don't buy the test kits. I do things, I guess,
yeah.
the old-fashioned way.
Same, dude.
Um,
I really I thought that was a time saver. I was
mhm.
like, damn, this is tight. But I wouldn't either because it's like they could still peel your genetics from that little snippet you send
Well,
in
and
to
they
have
can,
sex.
but once again, like, I am not under the belief, or I do not possess the belief that they're systematically stealing tissue and creating genetic from the, creating using that for the genetic breeding process. What I do believe is they've amassed a smashing amount of data, and they're using different data points and things like that and clusters to help guide them or navigate them through a breeding process. And if you
Yeah,
look at some of the folks who've been hired recently, the guy from who's did a bunch of breeding projects for Monsanto most recently, he's the head of their breeding program now, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
Um,
Syngenta,
you know,
yeah,
these are individuals that thrive on breeding via using data points. I mean, it's the modern way of doing things.
yeah,
So you know, I'm not the same. Like, oh my God, the sky is falling, the industry's over, these guys are going to take it over. I don't believe that. Will their existence, if they do exist in the future, make it harder for some folks to navigate? Maybe, but we've never been without our challenges in this industry.
yeah,
Um, we've overcome a lot of hurdles
yeah.
over the years. I know I have.
Hell
I've
yeah, dude.
been faced with a lot of different adversities, and just
Mad
figure out how to
L's,
work way over it. Yep.
mad L's, bro. You know what I mean?
And commenting on the Phylos
Hmm.
Galaxy too, I remember it's different for
Hmm.
sure. But I
Hmm.
remember when Sunrise did like strain match, they
Hmm.
if you get something tested, they'd say what percentage match they
Yeah.
had it with
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
strain
Yeah.
they'd
That
test. And
was.
I
Yep.
feel like
Yep.
that's pretty similar.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
A little more detailed with the Galaxy, but in general the same idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he was just doing it via chemotyping versus
Right.
genotyping. Yeah, no,
Right.
absolutely. Chemical analysis versus gene analysis. And I thought that was, a cool approach as well.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing really at this point that, that company would have to offer me that would make me want to do business in the future. I'm not going to ever be a part of your breeding program. So,
yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
No
um,
males for you, no beans for you, no cuts
yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
none of that.
Don't
No,
come by the store, please. Like
no,
we don't
please
want
don't.
that around here. Yeah. Like that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, so yeah, I would consider that relationship severed.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear, but also sad to hear, because it's like,
Yeah,
man, like it sounded like a really great idea in the beginning, and it's like, well,
it was. It
you
was
know,
until pivots were made and promises were broken.
yeah, dude. Okay, so my next cookie cutter question, what are some of your goals
Hmm.
in industry?
I mean, for me, just to continue try to make as positive of an impact as I can. I don't want people to get the idea that I'm some like major scale breeder. I'm a small grower that does some breeding projects on the side. I've
Yep.
had a couple of good ones that have worked out well for me, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure I'm making a positive impact and contributing things to the community that will appreciate and will appreciate for a long time. I don't like one trick ponies. I want
No
to, when
doubt.
it comes to genetics that I release into the universe, I want them to, stand the test of time. I want them to last for decade plus and
Yeah.
still be relevant, and not, fade into the night after, a 6, 12-month pop off.
And part
Yeah.
of that I feel like too is making sure that you're stabilizing genetics too, because so many people nowadays, it's like,
Sure.
yeah, maybe they select and work through a few different males, but then
Mhm.
when it comes to the next project, it's like, oh well, we selected this, I don't know, Berry OG male
Mhm.
through 50 plants, and it's
Sure.
awesome. And now we're gonna throw it into forum cut because forum cut's great, and we're
Mhm.
not gonna test the offspring. We're just gonna start
Right.
selling them as seeds, 100 to 10 pack.
Yeah.
And
I mean, here's the thing, and I struggle with this. I always weigh back and forth. Does this project? Do I want to do a project where I'm eventually getting to a for seed release, or do I want
Yes,
to
yes,
work through
yes,
a genetic
yes.
to make that next clone release? Because you
Yeah,
have the clone
right.
release and the seed release, and really the answer is, I'm kind of in the pursuit of both simultaneously. But
word.
um, you know, male selection, for example, is really, really important, and stressing males is really, really important to me. It's not just use the two males you have and one looks stronger than the other. I mean, I do drought stressing. I haven't done too much photo period stressing. Some folks do the nutrient stress as well. A little
Yeah,
bit of nutrient stress doesn't hurt there. But I think that's also something that's missed by a lot of newer breeders is the stress of males.
yeah. Cause
Males can be just as unstable as a female.
well, dude, and also much of the genetic material from the male will come out in the female offspring, correct? Like
Correct.
that's why you select them. Picking the male is of the utmost importance because more of that genetic material will make it into the female offspring than the male offspring coming from that parent, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the male can kind of drive the car, so to speak, or drive the bus, so to speak. But really, what when we're talking about stability, we all focus on the stability of the female plant, but there's also stability issues in male plants as well. And so, that drought stress of male, letting it go to a sag, multiple times throughout its cycle, both in veg and in the flowering process, can be really telling. When
Yeah,
you see a bunch of nuts hanging and then a few pistils pop out, that's not the male you want to use to create
yeah,
that next or even start that next line. So, male selection is very important. And then testing that progeny, something that I think a lot of folks who release, 25 new strains all at once and, you know, you know, people grow it out and nothing stable. They're getting lots of perms and a lot of selfing. Uh, I think that doesn't necessarily do a good deed to the industry or to our image.
nah.
So for me, breeding has to be done really. There's like an intention. There's an intent behind what I do when I do things.
I agree,
I
dude. When
you
I
know.
see those menus where it's like 20 strains long from one breeder and it's just one
Mhm.
strain crossed with 20 other ones.
They're the
Mhm.
same male. It's always the
Yeah,
Right.
male
Right.
line.
like
And
nothing
it's a
really
fast
sticks,
way to sell
dude.
seeds.
Yeah, but
You can sell a shit ton of seeds that way, and I think that's a business move, but it's just not something that I'm
And
interested
I'm
in.
not. I won't even
yeah,
be shy on calling people out who I've seen it from. At least on my end,
Mm-hmm.
tiger trees. I
Mm.
have been vocal against those or whoever's still in that company or compound genetics, wherever they are now.
yeah,
Yeah,
They,
compound. I
yeah.
remember those.
and
That's who I was thinking of about the
not
strain, the
to,
menu that's 20 strains
to
long.
start
Yeah, bro, I'll
any
take a
drama
look.
or
Mm-hmm.
anything, but they're dudes with same male into fucking 25 different elite females and $100. You can damn bet that none of those fucking tested.
Well,
So
yeah,
None of
and
those strains really stuck here. I've never
yeah,
heard of any of
right.
that
Well, I mean
being
that's the
fired.
thing. That's what it's saying. Like what do you want to do? There we go. Those are to leave lasting and on a good note though, dude. I want to leave behind a legacy of strain genetics that people enjoy for years and years to come. So you when chucking, I'm not going to do one male against 20 females. I might do three males against two else, and mix it up like that. But there's always a goal. Or, this is where my goal, the vehicles I need to get there.
Yeah,
and
have some intention at least.
Yeah.
Just let's let's have a goal in mind at least.
Right. And I'll be honest, um, you guys have talked to breeders. I'm sure it's a long process. It's not an easy path to what I consider doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely, but I feel and people really trust your work. And Professor P as well, Dynasty Genetics, and absolutely, and just very similar in the way both you guys want to produce the best possible offspring you can, and that involves testing and running through things, and that's what needs to be more universal in the breeding world.
Sure. I mean, it's like, are you trying to, there's multiple different avenues you can take, in the seed or breeding world. Are you trying to just sell as many seeds as possible? Then you pollen chuck. Are you trying to be a flash in the pan genetic? Then take the two most type strains and put them together and see what happens. Or are you really, are you trying to really make the difference? And that's where your breeders with intent, and Professor P is definitely one. I'm a big fan of Duke Diamonds. There's a bunch of other folks out there that are friends and colleagues that I think that are all doing it for the right reasons. They aren't out there pollen chucking.
Yeah.
Matt Riot is a friend of mine. Some people, go back and forth on him or whatever, but he is a friend. He is a good breeder. He is someone who breeds with intent. And so to me, those are the things that. That's something that's very important. But there's lots of clowns out there and a lot of people who are in it to make as much money as they can, as quickly as they can.
Yeah.
And they, they'll be around for a little while. They won't be around
Yeah.
forever, though.
Yeah,
They'll
dude.
fade in and out.
Yeah, man, serious. I'm a fan of certain guys' work, and I'm not a fan of other guys' work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's life.
Yeah.
And the thing with breeding, at least in my opinion, is when you take a close look at people, you can tell pretty early on whether there's breeding with intention or not. What the what the goal is.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you if your first release is cookies on the Hawaiian Blue Cascade ice cream cake, whatever, and that's your first release. Well, my guess is you didn't test anything. It's probably not very stable, and you're in it just for the money, right?
Yeah.
But if you've taken the last 2.5 years to use building blocks to get to this final release, second, third, fourth progeny out, then yeah, you've put the time and effort in, as you're doing this for the right reasons.
Yeah, man.
But it takes all kinds to make the world go round. So, people will chuck that pollen.
Yeah, dude. I agree. Like, whatever. I can't knock the hustle, but I'm gonna spend my dollars somewhere else. You know what I mean?
There you go. There you go.
Absolutely.
So, my next cookie cutter question: what are some concepts or ideas that you would like to promote for the future?
I did this on another interview not too long ago, and it just talked about just maintaining and having integrity. That's something that I feel like this. In the early days there was code.
Yeah.
And you were judged. You were certainly judged by your level of integrity, the amount of ethics that you possessed.
Yeah, man. He's
Circles
solid.
were tight for a reason.
That guy is solid. Yeah.
Right. And there seems to be less and less and less of that as more and more individuals flood into this industry. And just doing what you do with integrity, I feel, is so important. You're known. You're going to be known by your reputation in this industry. I've come to find that out very quickly. your reputation can travel around the world before you know it.
Yeah.
So do things for the right reasons, and stop doing things for selfish bullshit. Pull your ego out of your ass and be a real person.
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
and I see it so much. Not only in the store, but as I go out and I visit different farms and stuff like that. You can tell who the folks that have the higher levels of integrity. Their people are happier. When I talk about the people, their staff,
Yeah.
their farms work better.
Yeah.
The plants look healthier.
Good
But I
vibes,
think,
man.
that shit really does trickle downhill. And if you're flooding the valley with good vibes and respect, the valley will support it. It'll support that growth. And it's also, you've got to be really good to your people. Pat Pooler said something once that I thought was so very profound, and it's like, and this is something that somebody else told him, but I'll share it with you guys. And somebody once told him that you have to remember that it's your dream. It's not their dream.
Yeah.
It's your dream. But
Yeah.
they're the ones to help you get to the reality of making your dream come true.
Hell
So
yeah.
you got to take care of those people. Be good to each other.
Yeah, man.
And we as much as we can as a community to stay solid, and the fractures are just, they're going to make us weak.
Yeah, I just want to
And
say, after you said that, I just want to say shout out to Will, shout out to Mitch, shout out to Jesse. You know what I mean? Because
for
like
real,
me and Will came up with this idea, but I really, once the team came together, it was like, man, I appreciate those.
yeah,
So,
it's the way it works, man. And none of us are an island unto ourselves. We need other people. We need the support. I mean, heck, I need it.
no
So
doubt. Me too.
so I just hope that we can all move forward in a positive direction, and to just put aside our differences, even for just a little bit. Otherwise, when federal legalization happens, and it is coming,
It is. It's gonna
it is
happen sooner than
coming,
people think, man. Like that
absolutely. And
price is
if
gonna
we're
shoot back up to
fractured,
32, bro.
oh
It's
yeah, if
gonna
we're
be
fractured
32
and
again.
disbanded, we're going to get bowled over.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And that's
agree.
and then all for what?
No
So where
doubt.
does that leave us? So find strength in your numbers, people.
I agree. So we had one question from
Hmm.
Mitch from production. He says, "Has One Eye ever tried playing different music types to his cannabis to see the effects?"
Funny. No. I don't necessarily play. I play music when I'm working in the room, but I have had friends, multiple of them, anywhere from Grateful Dead to Mozart to hip hop, you name it. Do plants enjoy music? There's some anecdotal evidence. I think that there is response. I think there's some scientific too, to sound wavelength. So happy plants like to dance, right?
Yeah, right there in the fan, oscillating, dancing
Yeah,
in the oscillating fan,
there
man.
you have it.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know how many YouTube subscribers or viewers we have right now. If anybody wants to call in and ask any questions, the number is 1-833-777-DABS. That's 1-833-777-3227. We don't want to keep it too much longer, One Eye. It's
This has
been a
been fun.
super, super
I'm enjoying
awesome
it.
interview so far. Can you please at least plug your social media while we
Sure. Yeah.
pause and see if anybody
Well,
is
it's
gonna
just
call in?
Instagram these days. So,
Yeah, that's where all the weed folks are at.
yeah.
I tried Twitter and I'm like, there's not really that many guys on here. There's porn
No.
and there's
Yeah.
rappers,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I like,
Yeah.
I like weed and strippers, and that's IG.
Yeah.
Me.
IG. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's at One Eye RC, and that's all spelled out ONEEYERC. There you go.
Tight, tight. So,
And of
are
course,
there?
big shout out to Roots Garden Supply. Their Instagram at Roots
Yeah,
Garden Supply here in Portland, Oregon. Best shop in town.
yeah. Best shop in town for real. I
Yep,
remember,
my
like,
local shop.
dude, I bought like I think it was like 6 T5s from you guys,
Oh
and
wow. Well, thank you.
the well, dude, and what like the guy whose property I was on, he had some kind of GFCI circuit that they were plugging
Hmm.
into, and so the little bit of surge in the current kept breaking it and making them turn
Oh,
off. And like I brought
popping
him
it.
back, yeah, I brought him back like 2 times, and then I just had to tell the guy, I'm like, look, have your electrician come in and take that damn thing off, because these aren't gonna start a fire, bro. Like,
No, no,
buys
definitely
these,
not.
good. And so like that's how we solved the issue. And he was like, well, here's a bill for 200. I'm like, dude, I paid that shit. Like,
Electricity's fun, huh?
yeah, dude, like that kind of math for me was so difficult to do on
Hmm.
paper, man. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
I drove an
Intense.
electric car at the time, so kilowatt hours made sense to me,
Sure. Yep. Yep.
but dude, ohms and amps,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, what the fuck?
It's a lot to keep up with. That's for sure.
Yeah, dude, yeah. Okay, so it looks like our little connection issue caused us to lose a few viewers.
Uh-oh.
Um, are there any other topics that you wish to discuss before we
No,
wrap here?
I'd like to just actually plug one more thing if I could,
Yeah, yeah. Plug
and
it
that
on in,
is
bro. Plug it on in.
BioBiz nutrients. This
Yeah.
is the foundation to what I do, and I certainly use them as part of my core formula. The company's been really good to me over the years. It's also been good to my lady. She is the U.S. representative for the company, so shout out to D-Bird.
Ah, very cool.
There you
Nice.
go.
Awesome.
And you can always reach out to BioBiz PDX to get a hold of her. And if you ever need any
Yeah,
samples, let her know. There
that's
you go.
cool. Yeah,
Heck yeah.
my
And
homie Cedar.
that actually leads me to maybe a question we can end on.
Sure.
Uh, is have you noticed with your genetics any type of growing styles or nutrients that are best suited to like get the maybe to get the most out of the terpene profiles or potency, or is there any like styles that they prefer?
um, so, so quick things like on my own personal genetics, right? Is that what you're
Hmm.
referring to?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Dogwalker,
So
Scooby
yeah, yeah.
Snacks, yeah.
So Dogwalker is a great case. Dogwalker. What we found out very early on with the original 8 is she is pretty light sensitive. So due to oversaturation can instigate some not so desirable qualities. This is where we got the first S1 seeds from Dogwalker. At the time, we were all running single bulbs because nobody was running double-ended yet. We were running maybe 18 to 20 inches off the tops, 24. A couple of us ended up getting a couple of beans this way. And I think Pat and I were on the phone one day, and he said, "Hey, I'm just going to kick my lights up and see what happens. Maybe they're getting a little too close. Maybe the plant's a little sensitive to light." He pulls up to 30 some inches, and we all do the same. Nobody ever sees the seed again.
Damn.
So so there was definitely a stress that wasn't identified in the first maybe round or two, but by maybe the fifth round was resolved.
Word.
When it comes to secondary metabolite production, so terpenes, cannabinoids, flavonoids, so forth and so on, before switching over to BioBiz a few years ago, I was running another formula that I'd run for years and had really started to doctor that formula and curtail it to kind of maximize the results of the genetics that I was running. And what I did find is that formula was kind of a combination of salt and organic together. And it always provided a wonderful flavor profile. But when the first time I ever did a blind test to a bunch of folks, BioBiz versus this other formula, it wasn't 100%, but it was around 90. And what I noticed was there's this level of sweetness, which is a strange thing to say, especially when I love gas and push and things that are really acute almost to the palate. But there's a sweetness that I get from BioBiz that I could never generate out of my other genetics, and that sweetness kind of translates to a smoother finish. So I couldn't say that this nutrient's going to do better than that nutrient. I mean, have I tried stuff grown by other nutrient companies and thought it's kind of a lackluster representation? there are certain nutrient companies, and because I sell all of them, I'm not going to sit here and bash any of them.
Right.
But there are certain nutrient companies that I can almost every time, hands down, when I get a sample of a flower, tell you that it was grown with that nutrient company.
Yeah, you know what it's grown with. Yeah.
Yeah, there's certain common denominators in the flavor package that you get from certain companies.
Yeah,
right, which is definitely a bummer, because like when you do all the work to breed a strain and you can still taste like what you grew it with, and regardless of how the flush went, as you're saying, it's an underlying flavor, it's like
there's some note or tone that shows up from varietal to varietal too. So what's interesting is I've at this point I've tried Dogwalker, grown from so many different from hydro systems to beds to living soil, greenhouse, full sun, indoor unit, cocoa, peat, whatever. And I do find it kind of interesting to see and tell the little nuances and differences between the different methods. But what I tell people is all the methods work. What I think I would my one handoff to folks is just stick with a method and learn how to tailor that method and those nutrients to your genetics that you're running specifically at that time, so that you can get to that full genetic expression. Don't let your first run and having a sickly plant be the final judge and jury of whether that plant was good or not. Run it a few times. Try to get to a healthy run, for crying out loud.
I agree.
I see a lot of people who have a shit round because they had bugs or they had PMN, and then they want to bail on the strain. It's not the strain's fault that you had those problems.
User error. Yeah,
that's user error. And something tells me if and I've seen it in my own garden. I mean, I've had issues over the years. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when I dealt with root aphids 8 years ago, or whenever that was, I had some pretty miserable runs. And that Dogwalker wasn't as good as the Dogwalker that came out, when I didn't have those issues.
No doubt.
So
That's it, man. I gotta say, shout out to my homie Cedar too. He used to work there at the store, and he always plugs in the BioBiz, and so does his brother Ush. Man, they're always like, man, grab that BioBiz, and I'm like, man, now to hear you say it, I'm like,
He's
I know
one of
where
my
they got it from. You know what I mean? I'm
right on. He was a pleasure to work with, and we still get to see him quite a bit. So
he's
we love
homie.
that guy.
I try to hit him up when I go back to Oregon too.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like me when I'm playing golf. I can yell at the ball, I can yell at my club, but ultimately it's me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
User error.
That's it. User error. User error. Now, if you got a clone from somebody and it came with an STD, then okay, that may not be user error. But anything short of that, it's on you. It's on me. And that's why I don't have partners.
Yeah, it's good to keep everything in
someone
house.
else for something that goes wrong. I want to be able to shoulder all the responsibility and yell at myself.
Man. I can I'll bet on myself because I can deal with the L. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But it's like, man, if I have to trust too much to someone else, it's gonna piss me off when we lose.
Oh yeah, no, that's why I had my last partner in I don't know 97 or something like that. So it's been a nice run.
Dope. Yeah, you're doing well for yourself, One Eye.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
I appreciate you guys. You guys are too cool. Thanks so much, dude. This is a lot of fun.
Really,
I'm enjoying myself.
Really respected man in the community, dude. We just really want to thank you for coming on the show. I hope we can do a follow-up interview sometime in the future.
Sure.
I had one more question. Are you going to do any seed releases of any of the stuff you bred? And then another question from Mitchell is how many strains have you bred to date?
Oh
A
God.
lot, right?
Right.
It's
so
like, man,
let me start with your question first about the seed release. There might be a collaboration occurring here in the near future. I mean, it's still like announcement wise, probably, from being very blunt, 12 months away.
Okay.
These things take a long time.
Yeah, man.
But there is a lot of potential for something here, collaboration coming down the pike. I can't really, that's about all I will say it and divulge.
Okay.
But it's something that I'm pretty excited about. I think something the community will be pretty excited about as well.
Yeah, I want some beans. I'm trying to buy some beans.
Yeah. And then I'm also like literally in the process of going through. I just cracked like 17 new crosses, and I'm gonna go through those and see what pops. Kind of looking for that next new cut too. So
Word.
yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
see. Always little irons in the fire. The like I said, the seed thing. I've batted back and forth. I actually started a project last year, but kind of bailed on it this year. But someone I spoke with a close friend about a week ago or so, and we kind of stoked the fire together, and we've decided to forge a path together. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
And then how many, right?
Yeah. How many? Last question. Last question.
Whew.
It's been a long interview. We appreciate
Yeah,
you
I don't
sticking
know.
around, bro. It's been
I mean,
awesome. Like,
I've bailed on more things than I've kept, obviously.
yeah.
So I don't know. We're probably in the 40, 50 range, I'm guessing. I don't know. I've
Yeah.
never really sat
Nice.
down and thought about that, but rough estimate between 40 and 50 crosses probably. And that's starting in what was the year we started with the actual crosses? Like 98, I
Damn.
guess.
Damn,
So,
bro. That's like, dude, you got to do a book, man. Like,
oh, jeez.
you got to do it. Like, even if it's only 100 pages, like,
Yeah, no,
like
there's
you could
stories
just
to tell.
do, yeah, you could just do an interview with a person who writes, and they can make
Yeah.
100
Oh, I
pages
appreciate
easy.
that encouragement, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would pay to read it, man.
All
Seriously.
right, all right. Well, there we go. I'm always looking for that next move for mailbox money. So,
No
you know.
doubt, bro. Yeah, that's how
Yeah,
it is too. Once you get
absolutely.
when you get it on Audible, bro, if you need
Yep.
somebody to read it, I will
There
read
you
it
go.
on Audible.
Okay, cool. I
Large
love
quote. Yeah.
that.
All
Oh,
right,
thanks a
ladies
lot.
and gentlemen, that was One Eye on Concerned Dabs podcast. So,
Right
like,
on.
dude, we really appreciate you coming out, man. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, man. Peace,
thanks for
guys.
coming on, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me. This has been a blast. We'll do it again. I promise.
no doubt. Thanks,
Cheers.
man. We'll send you the links once we get them for YouTube and Spotify. Okay.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
guys.
Yeah. Have a
Have a
good
great
night.
evening.
Cheers. Yeah, you too.
Cheers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm gonna do my outro dance. That was the 9th episode of Concerned Dabs podcast. I was your host, KDM Kane. With me was my co-host, Will Terps.
We'll see you later, folks.
I got to give a shout out to my guys in production, Mitchell Wilson and Jesse Curry. This has been a Main Node and Joseph Street Enterprise production.